Go Pizza presents SDP, the Steve Dangle Podcast, with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Let's go!
Hi! Big day.
Hi.
Big day. Hailey Salvian's joining us, which is pretty amazing. So excited to have her on. In just over an hour, we're going to talk about the NWHL and about their first team in Toronto. It's been rumored on and off for years. Yeah. It just never.
I think it was the 2016 Clarkson Cup I was at. Mm-hmm. And there was a big stir when I was there because, like, as soon as the broadcast ended or something like that, the NWHL basically posted this cryptic thing that they were expanding into Toronto and Montreal.
Yes, I remember that.
And then that didn't happen, and I don't know.
Well,
it was it's just another part of the saga. But I was going to say between the two, but that's not true. This is independent. This is the NWHL doing their thing, and it'll be an interesting week of guests.
Yeah, so do we want to talk about that?
Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, I guess we do. Yeah, all right. So we've got Hailey on today. She's the one who's been following the story mostly. And I think bestly. I also think
Christina Rutherford says what's up.
Okay, well that's true. Christina's profile on Danny Ryland's pretty amazing. But
Rogers gang.
We're gonna have our old friend Anya Parker on Sunday. Talk about the players' perspective and the move to expand the league. Obviously, anytime a league expands, you want to hear from the players' union perspective, which Anya is one of the leaders and organizers of the NWHL Players Association. And then, of course, we're going to have, and this is the first time we can ever say this, a commissioner on next Wednesday.
Gary Bettman, the ban has been lifted.
No, he's still banned, I thought.
He's still banned.
No, next Wednesday it'll be Roger Goodell.
Won't be that. It will not be Adams. It won't be Rob Ranford. It won't be Adam Silver. It will be Danny Ryland of the NWHL, which is going to be pretty cool. We're excited to chat with her and, talk about this whole thing. I mean, one of the coolest parts about all this is, we're talking about sports and that are traditionally male dominated. Hockey is one of them. This league was founded by Danny, who was a female hockey player herself and a very, very good one. We got an ownership group in Toronto that's owned by 3 people. 3 people are operating this business, and it's 3 women. And I think that that's really important. So it's a great time to be a hockey fan, and it's nice to get some good news in the middle of this. You know what I mean? Even though there are lots of places talking about like what's it going to be like when we come out of lockdown. It's starting to feel like, well, we're not there yet, but we might be lifting here in a few weeks. Even if it's slow, it's there's some good news. This was extra good news, and it's just nice to talk about hockey and not pandemic. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Steve's not paying attention.
No,
Steve's reading
I am paying attention.
What are you reading? What's important?
I'm trying to decide whether or not I should talk about your microphone. But
what's wrong with my microphone?
There's just some popping and lags. But then I was like, no, that's probably Zoom doing that.
Yeah, that's probably just the internet.
Yeah, but I could have just gone on saying nothing, which I was. So
it's true. Adam did ask you what was on your mind.
I was listening.
I'm trying to. So it's just popping?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, well. Welcome to the internet.
Yep.
Can't help it. Yep. So I guess the thing is, so until Hailey comes on, we're going to save our conversations about that. What we do need to talk about is the other top story of the day, which is Too Hot to Handle.
Hell yeah.
On Netflix. Okay, so for some reason, Jesse has become the king of reality TV. I think it has something to do with his girlfriend.
It definitely has something to do with living with a girl in her mid-20s.
Who is, by the way, just an absolute flippin' riot to hang out with. And she has gotten Jesse into all the good shows. So because Jesse endorsed Love is Blind, I watched Love is Blind, and I was not disappointed. And then Jesse endorsed Too Hot to Handle and told us, Steve, that we had to watch it. Now, Steve, have you watched the entire series, or have you?
I watched the entire thing.
Wow. So I'm the only one on the show who's made it. I made it to episode 6. I have not seen the whole thing yet.
You're the only piece of garbage, horrible person.
Right. Which means we're going to talk about the first half of it today. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. is it ever surprising to you? Like people say we talk about hockey a lot, right? And we do, even in our own personal lives. And the three of us get together with our friends, hockey inevitably comes up. We talk about it. Some of our friends roll their eyes or whatever. Does anyone ever call people on talking about themselves, their bodies, and sex? Does that ever get called out? Does anybody ever hang out with these people that are on this show and go, guys, you talk about sex like sex is great, but you talk about it all the time.
Right. So here, Jesse, you look like you have something.
I was going to say, those people tend to surround themselves with like-minded people. I feel like in Kells' everyday life, in Harry's everyday life, Harry's surrounded by guys like Harry, and they're all walking in packs talking about sex and how hot they are and doing their hair constantly. I think that's the kind of group you hang out in. You walk around in a pack of hot people.
Harry looks like well, and speaking of the word pack, like Harry looks like, okay, what's the movie where the mom and the daughter, they trade bodies? What's
the
it,
Lindsay
Freaky
Lohan
Friday?
one?
Freaky Friday.
Yeah, Freaky Friday.
Yeah. Okay, if an owner and their dog changed bodies, Harry would be the dog in a human body. Just the face he's always got on. He just looks like someone's walked by the house, like at all times.
He reminds me of David Dobrik in the way he's always just laughing and smiling at the same time while he's
smiling. Yeah. Yo, he could commit murder and get off because the judge likes him so much. Like he's so likable.
Like, do I look like I could ever get mad enough?
Yeah, no. He doesn't get upset. And also when people are upset with him, it's all like, but he's so flippin' cute. Like.
Right.
He's 6'5",
and he's so very in the wrong. Very
right off the top.
Extraordinarily first. Right away.
What you're talking about is Francesca and Harry, they kiss, and they lose $3,000.
Francesca is from BC, by the way.
Francesca sucks so hard.
She sucks.
Yeah. Yes. Well,
So when they kiss, the whole premise of the show is that when they kiss or touch or do anything, and they're warned by this little Alexa device called Lana, they're warned that there's this $100,000 prize money.
Yeah, we should maybe explain what the show is, like from the top.
Well, we sort of mentioned it last, but essentially the idea is this. Imagine you are extremely sexy, and you're on an island with extremely sexy people, and all you guys do is talk about your bodies and sex, and you're just a one-night stand person. They throw these people together and go, okay, we're going to try to reform you, and you're going to have to learn to get a deeper connection with each other. And so there is no sex, there is no kissing, there is nothing allowed on the island.
They don't know this. They don't know this when they sign up, but they find out very fast.
Yeah, they think it's just going to be like Temptation Island. Like, oh my God, let's just sleep with that person, and there's nothing at stake. Oh no, there is something at stake. It's the money. And here's the thing. Whenever a couple breaks the rules, Lana pipes up. Lana is like the little Alexa device. And she says, rules have been broken. We've charged you $3,000. And so the first time this happens, it's because this very tall Aussie guy named, what's his name again?
Harry.
Yeah.
And Francesca, who definitely sucks.
Yeah.
Not right away. Like
not right away.
No, she sucks right away.
Yeah,
I think right away you get the idea that she's going to be terrible, and then she has her little terrible friend Hailey, and it's just the two of them are going to be the awful girls on the island.
And
sorry,
Hailey,
I should back up. They all seem like they suck.
You know what?
That's why they're on the show,
one of them,
right?
I'm going to disagree with you. David does not suck.
Okay, David.
David is pretty phenomenal, man.
Have you gotten to the point where the next set of people come to the island? Not just Bryce, but
parts of them.
So Bryce comes, and then 3 more people come. I assume you're on that episode.
Yeah, I'm not quite through it though.
Okay.
Does David start to suck? Don't tell me David starts to suck.
No.
More stuff happens with David.
But almost all of them, basically, I mean, the whole point of the show is, all right, so we got 10 people who suck. And by the end of the show, we're hoping they no longer suck. So they all sort of suck. So we're grading on a bit of a curve here. Mm-hmm. So right away, I wasn't like, friggin' Francesca, stupid idiot. And then Harry and her hook up right away, and they get dinged. And they know it's against the rules.
And they just made out. Like, they just make out.
All they do is make out. And right away, $3,000 down. But now help me remember, do they say right away that it was them two?
So they're all sitting there, and then they're kind of denying it, and then Harry goes, Francesca, she kissed me, even though he knows it was the other way around. So he throws her under the bus, and then she says, no, it was entirely you, and then neither of them take responsibility for the whole thing. And then Francesca tries to get back at everybody on the island for not liking her because she's a terrible person, and she and Hailey team up to kiss and lose everybody $3,000. So that's the
on
sequence.
purpose. On purpose.
Yeah, on purpose.
But Harry, what got me about Harry is he lied about it to the guys.
Yeah.
Like, right away to all the guys. We made out. And like they didn't seem that mad. They were like, but then when it was the whole group, to her face, to the person involved's face, be like, you did it. I was just like the balls. The huevos.
He does.
On that Aussie man.
He does. And the great
How
thing
dare
is,
you? That
so
Aussie man who sounds not Aussie at all.
She hates him for like a couple episodes. But the craziest part is she ends up
half.
She ends up taking she ends up taking a shower with this guy Kells, who is just fucking built, man. Like this guy is
he
huge.
could play running back in the NFL tomorrow just for his size.
Adrian Peterson would be afraid of him. Like he's huge.
Not enough of a factor in the show, Kells.
No,
not enough.
But he took it so seriously. He's like, I am here not to lose money. I got my blinders on. I'm going to have no fun.
Yeah.
So.
Because I feel like he doesn't care. Like he will have sex again.
The girls,
wouldn't your chance at $100,000?
Yeah. The girls upheld their end of the reality show bargain. There's gonna be drama, and there's gonna be fights with each other, and there's gonna be arguments with each other, and a few of us are not gonna be friends at the end of this, or even during the show. Whereas the guys, there's one, I don't think Adam's gotten to it, thing where you're like, you dog. But
Corey.
for the most part, like Kells, yes, Corey is a piece of shit. Yeah. Kells, there should be a moment. There was never a moment where a guy on the island genuinely thought Kells might slap me. And there should have been.
No.
There should have been.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't
enough of a factor in the show. Yeah.
Let's step back for a second. Okay, so if you haven't seen this, so we're talking about this girl Francesca, right? Mm-hmm. She hangs out with this other girl who is a Florida frat girl, and self-admitted, like she says, yes, I go to parties and we party and we get super drunk. Like that's her. That's this person. They were in your friend group in high school. Everybody's got the person who parties and they really get drunk and somehow they end up with a university degree. Do you hear how there's too much soul in Adam's voice? Yeah, maybe there's
just you're describing her perfectly though.
Yeah, he is. But like, do you hear how there's like a hint that you might feel things?
Yeah, no, she doesn't feel things.
Like that's the only inaccuracy.
She might have no personality, but the one thing she is devious. So her and Francesca, so what they decide to do is like, okay, so Francesca's mad at everybody, and I think a little bit rightfully so, because they all sort of believe, happy tall guy, and they don't believe her when she said, I didn't kiss him, he kissed me, even though they were both sort of in on it. I feel like Harry created
a monster.
For sure.
He created a monster, episode 1.
So Francesca, and what is her name? I can't remember anyone's name.
Hailey.
Yeah. So Francesca and Hailey, they sneak off, and we've already sort of mentioned this, but they go, you know what? We're just going to kiss. And it's going to cost everybody money, and we're just going to blame it on somebody else. Yeah. So they kiss that night later on, and then I think is it Rhonda sneaks off with another guy, like one of these.
Sharon.
With Sharon.
Yeah.
They sneak off in the middle of the night. They almost break the rules, but they don't break the rules. Everybody hears them because everybody's sleeping in the same room. Everybody hears them leave in the middle of the night and hang out together in the middle of the night. So the next day, Hailey and Francesca are like, once Lana kind of lights them up and charges them, I think it was like only $2,000 for that kiss.
It's three.
Was it 3? It was 3 again?
3 G's a kiss.
It was $3,000 a kiss. Okay, so anyway, Lana, they get dinged their $3,000, so now they're down to $94,000, and everybody's ticked off again, but nobody can figure out who's doing it. And they're like, well, Sharon or Rhonda, they left. Like, I don't know. And you see Francesca actually say, step into my web, and then it's like, I'm stirring the pot and whatever. And you just realize that is awful to do to somebody. You've just robbed everybody of $3,000. And Hailey's like, I don't even care. Like,
I don't care.
She did that and then tried to blame somebody else. Like, it wasn't even just that they did that and we're like, we cost you guys $3,000 because you were mad at us. She did that and then tried to blame another couple.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
every situation, but with every villain comes a hero. And that's when Detective Jesus gets involved.
Matthew.
Is that his name?
Matthew
I just knew him as
Jesus
Detective Jesus.
Jesus. Yo, he's the best.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but he is Detective Jesus.
So this guy,
he played the role that Kells should have. There should have been at least one guy, because Kells was there to win, and I am not touching anyone. I'm not even making any friends. I'm not showing any personality or anything.
Kells did get naked in the shower with Francesca.
Kells, when Francesca showed interest in Kells' eyes sparked up. Then he started playing the game. Yep. But once he didn't have like another match on the island, he kind of just like, all right, there's no one here for me. Everyone's kind of paired off, or I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to play anymore. But when Francesca was going for him, he was all in.
Yeah, we got to talk about, not yet, we're not there yet, but we got to talk about how they wrote the show on the fly.
Oh yeah.
I was yelling at Lana a couple of times the same way I was yelling at you for the by what metric, because they kept going, oh, you could win this money, and I'm like, but what are we counting? How are you winning?
Do they all get that money each? Do they all split that money? Is it a few of them who split that money? Is it? And you don't know. And by the final episode, you're just like, oh, so the writers got together, probably like blasted off of whatever they brought to the island, and we're just like, so like the money. And they were like, oh shit, the money. Oh, what do we do? Oh.
Well,
do you think they'll go with my idea of calling it Can't Fuck Island, or is that like, will Netflix not allow that?
Actually,
like, they came up with so much on the fly.
Fun fact: the episode, or sorry, the whole show is based on the Mastered My Domain episode of Seinfeld. That's where the producers got the idea.
Yeah, which
and
is
it's like two of those.
Yeah, when they don't self-pleasure for 2 weeks and no one makes it through. Yeah. That's sort of the idea.
But then the scoring system was based off of Steve's list of best Russians. By what metric? Best how?
Best.
Just best. Money goes to best. Best.
Just didn't come. Like, that was basically the show.
That was it.
Come Island.
Who wins? This is the guy who didn't come.
Yeah, exactly.
Adam, okay, do you know, has anyone banged?
Not yet. They've
Okay,
spent a night in the suite. They've spent a night in the suite.
We'll get there on Sunday.
We'll get there on Sunday.
Okay.
So Detective Jesus.
Okay. So Detective Jesus.
Yes.
Let me set the scene with Detective Jesus. So they do, like, if you've ever seen like The Bachelor or any other reality show, they do an intro of every character. And so this guy comes in, and it's a tropical island. This guy comes in.
It's Puerto Vallarta in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So it's not an island, it's a peninsula. But anyway, this guy walks in, and he's got the harem pants on. So the big, baggy black pants. He's got a gigantic toucan to cover his man bun and a very baggy white shirt. And all anybody can say is, dude, like, you look great, but you look super uncomfortable. It's hot. And his answer is, well, that's just my swag. Like, that might have been my favorite line in the whole show. Like, are you hot in that, dude? Well, it's just my swag. Anyway,
which again,
nicknamed Jesus because he has Jesus length hair.
Yeah.
And looks like Jesus.
And
Looks like a lot of
He looks like a Jesus sex god.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Maybe this was me, but there were a few people who showed up on the island because these are supposed to be the hottest people ever. And there were a couple like men where I was like, yeah. Like, I was like, is that?
Are you specifically talking about Bryce?
Bryce. We'll get to
Bryce is a little creepy. Bryce needs to stop winking at women and getting blackout drunk.
Yeah, we need to talk about Bryce. We definitely need to talk about Bryce. So Jesus comes in
fascinated
and he's
with
trying to
Bryce.
figure out.
Jesus was one of them, though. I'm like, yeah.
He's trying to
You're tall
solve
and have
crime.
a man bun. Like that doesn't make you automatically hot.
No, he's a good-looking guy, man.
He's
a good-looking guy.
Okay, there's a
Yeah.
difference between good-looking and reality show about hot people hot.
Oh,
And I didn't think he was that.
Yeah, and he also had no chat, as they say in the show
Shit
a lot.
chat, according to
shit
Dave.
chat.
Shit chat.
He couldn't talk to any of the girls.
no.
No
he wasn't-
ba-ah.
I'm sure he's.
He had no ba-ah. You know what I
making fun of
mean?
the British girl?
Yeah, no ba-ah. In there.
In it.
In there.
Why do they? Okay. Yo.
Let's move on from Jesus. I feel like we said
Okay,
everything.
yeah, let's move on. Jesus
let's-
was trying to solve the crime. He eventually did solve the crime and found the two girls out, and they got outed for it. But beyond that, can we talk about how much certain British people say "in it"?
In it.
And it's like
Chloe.
Canadians get Canadian.
Chloe.
Yeah, Chloe is one of the girls on the show, and I think it's Cockney. Like it's this very thick
Essex, I think. Essex.
Yeah, Essex, Southern British accent,
Mhm.
and
Not
you're
the good one.
not the good one. No, not the good one. And she,
We're on this island in the great weather, and we're all together in this great island in it. And
and they I
Tony
don't know what
comes
it
and
is.
he's so fit in it. And but we're all together. And sorry.
They swing into every vowel like George of the Jungle. Like watch out for that tree. Bam. Like and what is within it? What does that mean?
I think it's just a throw-in word,
Have you not
It's
seen
like, how I just put that in there. It's just a throw-in word, in it?
in it? Have you not seen the British people be like meme on Twitter?
Yes, I have seen that one.
Oh yeah, from time
British
to
people
time.
be like Paka, and they'll spell it out though, and then British people read it and they're like, "Shit, we do talk like that."
So Chloe's like kind of the ditzy young one. She's only 19. I looked this up. So,
yeah, and she says she's ditzy at the top. She's like, "Yeah, I'm not really that smart." And it was like,
and then when the new people
right.
join the island, she's like, "Please don't tell anyone I'm dumb." She says that. But it's very endearing. I found myself as the series went along, being like, okay, I'm rooting for Chloe more and more because she seems very genuine, even though she might not be all there.
she's sweet, and so is the Irish girl, and her name is, and I'm looking it up right now because I've got the whole cast. Nicole O'Brien.
Yeah.
Right.
She sort of plays a background character, but she seems kind of fun too. You're like, okay, you guys would be a pretty wicked time to hang out with. Now we got to move on, I guess, to my boy David, who I have to be honest with you guys. If I was going to pick a favorite on the show, it's going to be David, and it's only because I haven't seen it all the way through.
He's reality show about hot people hot.
Yeah,
he is
100%.
For sure. And David is ripped, but I wouldn't say David is like I don't know, like he's a good looking guy, but he's not like Kells hot, right? Like Kells is hot. So David,
Is he?
you know what I'm saying?
We have different perspectives, man.
So I think there's definitely tiers to the hotness of the people on the island because they're all 10s, but some are like 10s with a twist that just makes them 11s. And Adam, I don't think you got there yet, but when Corey joins the island, he might be the hottest person in the show amongst a bunch of hot people. And it's a little ridiculous at how he has the entire package. So David's definitely hot, but he's not Corey hot.
Nipples.
No.
The pierced nipples are a twist.
So Corey's
That's a twist.
We'll talk about Corey in a second, but Corey is shaped like a V.
It wasn't the rings,
Like
it was the
his
studs. It was the
Yeah, Adam.
Anyway.
he is shaped like a V.
He is. He's like a walking Dorito, like except that he's in really good shape. Anyway,
Dorito with beautiful eyes.
So yeah, David, your
For sure.
favorite character.
David's my favorite. Let me tell you about David. Okay,
All
so
right,
David. So we mentioned a little bit about Sharon and Rhonda,
Mhm.
and Sharon had his heart broken. His last girlfriend, we find out, left him for his best friend. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
How dare
real tough.
That would be terrible. And you would have your walls up. And Rhonda the whole time is like, hey, David, bring down the walls. Like, we're getting, there's something here. There's something here. He won't bring down the wall. But his boy, David, who is my favorite,
Who has great banter.
his guy, he also speaks like that.
He has good chat.
We have great banter. We're all together in the weather. And
So So David sort of moves in on that, but he does it in a polite way. But like they end up together, and they're doing this exercise where they're standing on the edge of, each of them is standing on the edge of this mattress that they've got set up. And one of the things that they're trying to do, because remember they're trying to reform these sex addicts, is they have you stare into your partner's eyes. David and Rhonda are teamed up, and they stare into each other's eyes. And David, who's done several things along the way to be the sweetest guy ever, stares into her eyes and starts crying. And I went, that's what got me, man. I was like,
yeah,
I
it's
love
the
this
first
dude.
moment in the series where you see the heart. Yeah,
but
Like,
why did he cry?
I want to hug him.
I don't understand why he cried.
Because the eyes are something Shakespeare. You can look into the soul, whatever.
yeah.
And let me just say,
Okay.
just so flippant. Like, you're like, dude, like it's a thing where you're like, God, you know, when you see your best friend cry and you're like, I fucking love that guy. Stop crying, but I love you.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. You just want to give the guy a hug, and he's a great guy. So here's him and Rhonda are starting to hit it off, but he sees sort of Sharon in the background floating on a pool noodle, and Sharon is not happy. And the camera actually catches him looking at both Rhonda and David, and you know,
And
kind
this
of making
is also
faces.
important, like in case any of you listening were wondering who to root for. Sharon is a short king.
Sharon has a little bit of little guy syndrome. You know?
Yeah, but Jesse couldn't possibly cheer for him. He can't relate. He's not a short king like Sharon. Sharon is a short king. Pete Blackburn's guy is Sharon.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
him and Pete would get along heavy. Yeah.
Yo, they both have a great jawline too. Pete's got a like chiseled jaw.
I know. I was on a poster with him. I hated it.
Oh man, it's
My hardest angle is up here. It's in my nose.
Yeah.
His
So
is at his
eventually,
chin. It's very frustrating.
Rhonda tells them that she's going to go with Sharon and going to try and form a bond with him.
Well-
and David's kind of out of the picture.
Well, but David goes to Sharon first and says, listen, and this is my favorite, another favorite part of David. He sits down with Sharon and he's like, hey man, listen, obviously you know what's been going on. Me and Rhonda, we got something going. And Sharon is not happy. And then David's like, listen, we've been friends since we got here and whatever. If you put yourself out there, if you get out there and you take this and run with it, this baton and run with it, I will step out of the way. I'm not going to get in the way of you and Rhonda because I want you to be happy. And Sharon goes from pretty mad to like the happiest dude on the show. And they have a big hug and it's flipping adorable. And again, David is the king. David is my king. He's the man. And I just want to say shout out to David, at least through the first half. We'll get to the second half later. Through the first half, David's an MVP. Is he not?
Yeah, he's probably the MVP of the show so far.
There's
That episode 6, yeah.
The show is very tough because it's between they never properly explain exactly how you win.
Mm-hmm.
Other than you're
who's
not
best.
allowed to
Who's best.
It's just best.
Who's best
Like
there.
you're supposed to create emotional bonds as well as not have any sex. So some people, their strategy was just, well, I'm just staying away from everybody, that's not how you do it.
Mhm.
And David sort of just does nothing other than be extremely nice. Whereas you're looking for growth. Like Sharon showed growth.
He did.
At first he was like the whole time, and then he sort of learned to calm down. But like Nicole was super nice, but there was just nothing there.
Yeah, there's
Corey
nothing to grow because she didn't. There's no relationship there for her to show that she's growing.
Right.
So,
This is the important thing about everyone new who comes to the island.
Mhm.
Not only are they reality show about hot people hot, but they all show up like, I'm an asshole and I'm gonna break all the rules. No one's gonna fill this empty vessel. So the show needed Francesca badly,
Yeah.
right? And Harry badly.
Yeah.
And Hailey, I guess they just decided, no, Francesca can be an asshole without her. And then she turned into Super Hailey because she had to be an asshole all by herself. And it was a great show.
So, do we leave it there for now and then pick it back up on Sunday? Or do we want to talk about any other events?
Do we want to talk about Bryce?
Oh,
yeah,
Bryce.
let's talk about
we gotta
Bryce.
Talk about Bryce.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Jesse.
Yeah.
Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
You ever met a Bryce before?
I don't know if I've ever met a Bryce, but I know of Bryces. I've met Bryces, I should say. Yeah, they're not in my life often, but I've met them.
You've met men with outrageous confidence based on nothing.
Yes.
Nothing.
So Bryce's personality surrounds around the fact that he lives on a yacht. And
he lives on let me just pause you there. He lives on a boat. He doesn't necessarily live on a yacht.
You wouldn't call it okay.
Not necessarily. Yacht implies serious wealth. And as Hailey, the British girl says, I can't tell if he's broke because he lives on a boat or if he's really just super rich. Like you don't know. So he does live on a boat. Is it a yacht? Not sure.
Bryce lives on a boat. He drinks heavily. He likes to wink. He chases Chloe, the youngest girl on the island. And then he has zero chat. And he's Bryce.
Nothing.
And he's not the most attractive person on the island. That's for sure.
No.
And I don't know what you pick about Bryce to root for. I was left sitting there. What am I supposed to be cheering for when I look at Bryce?
His redemption arc is far too sharp.
Yeah.
And also, he's one of those guys who, my biggest problem with the redemption arcs that so many people had on the island is like, no, you haven't grown, and you aren't showing like, oh, I'm just gonna block it all out. I'm not gonna have set. No one wanted to. And so many of these people were having to cope with no one really wanting to bang them for the first time in their lives.
Yeah.
And it hit him hard. That guy definitely left the island broken.
I'm trying to figure out who would want to have sex with that guy in normal life. Like, I don't understand. Like, here's the deal. They bring him on, and he talks about all these parties that he throws on the boat, right?
Oh yeah.
Talks about all these
his not yacht.
Crazy boat parties, just crazy. And in LA, you got to do stuff to stand out because everybody looks beautiful. Like, all these girls remind me of the girls in LA. So you got to have something that, makes you stand out. And you're like, oh, okay, whatever. And he's like, so sometimes, I'll play a little piano and then I sing. And that's what gets him. I'm like, you better be really fucking good at both of those. Because if you can sing a little, that's not going to impress people. People are harsh about that shit. If you can play piano a little, that's not going to impress people either. So
his first night on the island, they throw a party. His first night on the island, everybody's out on the beach. There's a single keyboard in the middle of the sand, and Bryce walks over. He's like, "I'm gonna show you guys what I'm about." He walks over to this keyboard, plays like 3 chords, and everyone's just kind of standing around, swaying, being like, "What do I do?"
Here's what he says. He starts it with, I'm going to play you a song I wrote.
Yeah!
Bad. No. Oh,
forgot it was an original.
And then you screw that up, and now you got to be on the island with these people for 3 more weeks. And that was your first impression. And
That's where he lost
and
it.
like, and this is what I'm talking about reality show about people. Reality show about hot people hot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's barely regular hot. Like, this guy, like, when I don't care. And I know his feelings on the matter at the end. And I know who's talking. I had peanut butter cookies yesterday. I didn't give it a second thought. I don't care, Bryce. I know what it looked like. But this guy saunters onto the island, and he's not even original cast, right?
No.
He's supposed to be
day like 4 or something, day 3.
He's fresh meat.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to walk in there the hottest shit ever, like Corey, like you said. And this dude walks on, and you're like, okay, I know they're all drinking all the time, but like this guy's actually walking in like with the hairline and the body like a bag of milk, and just outrageous confidence. Just outrageous. Yeah. And I'm like, where does any of this come from?
His confidence at the beginning is ridiculous.
First thing I thought was, he's not reality show about hot people hot. Second thing was, he's been to more than one prom.
No.
Can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? Is that a thing you're allowed to say? Is that a thing?
Steve Dangle pulling up from half court.
You might have had an older girlfriend.
Yo.
I went to 2 proms. I had an older girlfriend.
Yo,
maybe he went to 2 proms.
Did Steve just jump over the French guy at the Olympics and dunk?
He did. Whoo! It's over, ladies and gentlemen.
Damn. Over. That's terrible.
All right.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so Bryce isn't anybody to root for.
No, he's not.
And Chloe tries to go. Chloe tries to go on a date with him.
Who was the
God
first girl?
bless her.
Who was the
Chloe.
first girl?
What?
Who was the first girl Bryce went after?
Chloe. Fresh off of her prom. Yes, she's 19.
Oh, that's true. She's 19. Damn, Steve.
Yeah. So he tried. Chloe and Bryce, they go on a date because Bryce fancies Chloe, and then they have this little date, and they can't get a conversation started outside of Bryce wants to kiss her. Is their conversation? So and they have a bunch of that was the chocolate strawberries one, right?
Yes.
Wasn't that?
Yeah.
No, that was Dave.
No, that was David.
That was David. Sorry,
Or was
That was
that-
David. My boy David also struck out with Chloe.
yeah.
but like,
So
Anyway, so yeah, they have this date and nothing happens, and Chloe's like, I can't do this. I like geezers, but not him. So God bless her for trying.
geezers, but not him.
I don't know if he was the oldest one, but he looked it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not like
It
about
was-
looking haggard. It's I don't know. He seemed like at least my age,
I
right?
can tell you right now, I have the age of it from.
I wonder if the producers were like, okay, there's
27.
too much likability on
He's
this show.
27?
Like there's too many people you could root for. Let's throw someone in with absolutely nothing to offer.
And then
Because that's their guy. Like we got to have some throwaways here. And he seems like a throwaway. Like he seems
I said yacht because my theory was he was a really rich kid. Like his dad is like the head of Netflix. And then his dad, who's the head of
Holy
Netflix,
shit.
is like, hey, writers of Too Hot to Handle, can you put up my son on this? He needs something to do. That's what my theory was, but that's completely off base. You know?
So Bryce, by the end of the show, I felt bad for him because
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, if the show was actually about personal growth, this guy, no prospects of a relationship, none. And by the end of it, I'm like, does he have friends? Like because it seemed
No.
like every time he was in the interview room, he was like, this is the first time I talked to anyone all day. I just want to get my feelings out. Talk to the production staff. How you guys doing? You need water? I'll go get water. And like this poor guy was actually isolated for several weeks after being like, my dad is the CEO of Netflix or whatever Adam said or Jesse said.
He's 20. By the way, he's 29. He's 29.
Oh,
He was the only one.
The one I have says 27.
Okay.
I believe Adam.
Well,
Yeah,
it's,
I would believe
I'm just reading what
29.
the like the London Sun wrote or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. I have Oprah
He's
Mag.
the only one. I thought he was the only one who made progress because he had to, rather than he chose to. Everyone grew together, whereas he was just like, he might as well have been playing that shit alone.
I can tell you this: he is the only one on the show with less than 100,000 followers.
It's at
all
like
of them-
30K.
No, he's at 79 now or 72 now.
Okay.
But-
when I checked, yeah.
But like to compare and contrast, the Aussie guy who's super tall has 800,000.
Yeah.
So you could tell there are some favorites. By the way, this guy Bryce has a Cameo, and do you know what Cameo is?
Oh no!
You can pay Bryce for like shout outs, like personal shout outs.
Should we?
How much they cost? Yes.
Oh.
Good. Yo, hey, it's Bryce, and you're watching the Steve Dangle podcast. $35. That's it.
One of my friends
Dude.
got one of the guys from 90 Day Fiance to send a birthday message to my wife.
Oh, I'm sending you guys this link. This is amazing.
So speaking of Instagram followers, the one thing, the reason I didn't like the way it ended, Adam, you haven't gotten there yet. I don't know if I can talk about it. So
Should we wait?
Just
Should
by
we
the
wait?
end of
Should
the
we wait?
show, I just don't think Francesca grows at all and should get zero credit for it because she was on the show to become famous on Instagram like she already was. And then now, if you look at her profile, it's got like 1.5 million followers. I was like, she's not going to learn from this.
And at one point, I think she said something like, I don't even care about the money. I make lots of money on Instagram or whatever.
Every time I check it goes up. I think was the line.
Like this was a very important part of the prize money and not knowing where it goes. Because the pot goes down, like Adam, I don't know how far down you've seen it get to, but let's say it got down to 75 grand. And then you start doing the math of, okay, 75 divided by 12. And then you're like, man, if they lose any more money, and then you start doing like, what does the average person make? And then you're like, their prize money is going to be like less than like
it's going to be minimum
like
wage.
a $40,000 income.
It's going to be less than the plane ticket to Mexico.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't get it. It was very confusing. And I feel like now that they've done a season of the show, the writers who just completely they went to the island literally with a budget and a concept.
Yeah.
But nothing else. And now that they've done one season, I think season 2 is going to be a banger because they actually know how to do it. I legitimately think they came up with how they were doling out the prize money the night before.
You have to come out with some sort of just elimination and rules and a goal to get to. You can't just put the people there and be like, hey, it's kind of wacky. Who knows?
And
the money's going to go somewhere.
Detective Jesus, when he was like, Lana, was it this person? No, but Lana is obviously an actor being paid to talk like Lana. Yeah. And I think the people behind, they asked me who did it. Do I tell them? If he gets it right. Okay. No, it was not. Yeah. And he just kept asking. He knows, man. But yes. I think they came up with it on the spot.
Here's what I'm saying. Guys, they're going to do this again. It's going to be more money. But you know what could make the show better? Is if they did have some sort of elimination, but the people have to stick around so they can mess with the people that are not eliminated.
Oh.
The one thing is, my goal is to make out with everyone.
Yeah, so like when you have elimination, it sort of sucks because like you lose good characters, right? Good characters get eliminated. Evil ones, like good one, like whatever. So if you can't get eliminated, you can get eliminated from the prize money, and you've got nothing to lose. There could be something really cool.
So then you're just on the island as a temptation for everybody.
Exactly.
That's good. Adam.
But no one knows you've been eliminated. No one knows you've been eliminated. So like your whole time left on the island. Imagine if someone was such a piece of shit. They get eliminated like week 1. And then they just spend 3 weeks like catfishing someone, basically. Right? Oof, right? It's like how to lose a guy on an island.
Or your challenge, you have a secret challenge to get back in. So you have to get someone else. Like you traded spots, right? There's one person who will not get prize money, and you can't reveal that, and you gotta get somebody else in your spot. So you gotta betray someone else.
You kind of take it from like do you remember on The Circle where they had the influencers, so like the top 2, and how every week it kind of like you drop from the top 2. So you kind of take that idea where you have if you're in the top 2, then you're in the money, and then you're kind of trying to get people into the money, sort of.
I like
it's a good idea.
See how we're like writing
on the fly
beforehand.
On the fly.
Like they might steal some of these ideas.
I don't know. Rhonda and have you gotten to Rhonda's secret, Adam?
She has a secret.
She has a secret.
I haven't.
Secret.
Okay, so let's leave it there.
We'll go to next episode. We'll do Rhonda's secret.
Lead off with Rhonda's secret because we're about to bring Hailey on in about 5 minutes here anyway. But there are a couple things we probably should talk about. The first thing being the Quarantine Cup, which happens Friday, part 2. Now, Dangle Navy's up 3-0. However, Jesse, you were part of a practice today. I was not.
Yeah, just before we hopped on this podcast, I was practicing with Extra Toasties. Did not go well. So Pete Blackburn was on Twitch, and he was streaming our practice, and we were just playing a random team online. We lost that first game. And then a couple people in the Twitch stream were like, hey, let's get together and try and beat Extra Toasties. So a bunch of random people in the comments sent their PSNs to each other, and they formed a team of like 4 people. And we played them, and we lost. 3-2.
Oh, shit. You're just trying to soften us up. You're trying to make us. You're trying to take us off our game.
But we'll
Damn.
see.
Damn.
Yeah. I scored 2 goals over the course of 2 games, so I'm feeling good.
I mean, I'm the tournament's leading scorer right now, so.
Adam, if you could show up to one of our practices,
I will definitely show up to one of them. I will show up to one of them. You will get me at one.
Okay. But yeah, we haven't had a full squad practice either, which is very difficult. We've only had like max 4 people each time.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
You got to practice, man. You know how you get to Carnegie Hall, don't you?
Practice.
You don't. You get swept.
Well, we'll see. And whether or not it turns out to be a sweep where one team gets eliminated before the other, we're going to play all 4 games on Friday and, of course, be raising money for American and Canadian charity. So if you want to donate to the Canadian charity, you can watch the SDP stream. All the details will be there, and we'll be shouting them out online, obviously. And then if you're on the American side of the border, I believe the charity is Feed America.
Feeding America, yeah.
Feeding America. What's our charity on the Canadian side?
ConquerCovid-19.
There you go. So
and the loser has to pay $300 to You Can Play.
Bingo.
Nice.
So it's going to be a great one, and we're really looking forward to it. Now, there's a couple things we're going to do before we talk about the NWHL. There is a chance, and a pretty good chance, that late June, will be when we hold the draft. Now, this is weird because they're looking at doing the draft potentially in the middle of the end of the regular season, assuming hockey's back, or just as the playoffs begin. And there are many questions, and I'm going to run through a couple of them that Elliot Friedman has. First one, what do you do with conditional picks based on where teams finish in the playoffs, or even if they make the playoffs at all? Number 2, how do you deal with players who would be able to start next season elsewhere if the 2020-2021 NHL start is delayed later in the year? So this includes CHL, NCAA, European players, although their situations are unclear right now. Would those players be removed from their teams and given the opportunity to join NHL camps? Teams who know they're going to the playoffs will be unable to trade players they want to use draft picks. And because of the possibility of expanded playoffs, someone asked if one team could actually win the lottery and then the Stanley Cup. Can you imagine?
That
is the
would
only
be
option here just to not hold it in June?
I don't understand why it has to be in June.
Yeah, if we're having hockey, who cares about the draft? Let them wait, man.
Well, and there's lots of questions based on when this season starts, and so don't have it. Like, you miss the 3-day training camp that you have at the beginning of July that no one wants to go to.
Mm-hmm.
What's the problem?
Yep.
What's the problem?
Well, and if a player is good enough to make it, they're good enough to make it. And all of those players who are going to be drafted this year are going to be training all summer anyway. So it's not like, especially if, let's say you're Nick Robertson, right? Who's got a legitimate shot at making the Leafs, and I'm just using him as an example. You could use Alexis Lafreniere if, depending upon who gets him, probably will make his team. Those guys are going to be training all summer anyway. So whenever training camp happens, and I would assume that if the NHL does start in late June, early July, and that's what we're harboring under that assumption, if the NHL does start up, those guys are going to be fine. Lafreniere especially because he's not drafted, but they're going to be training all summer. And they'll be ready to go by October whenever new training camp starts. So I have a hard time believing that that's a big problem. I think it's just, for me, we're dealing with a union situation where the union has to come together, and I think they'll do this. They have to come together and vote to extend their own contracts because June 30th is the date. Mm-hmm. Their contracts aren't based on 82 games played or this many games played on the playoffs or the Stanley Cup being awarded. What I would be concerned about if I'm a player is, you have to extend your contract past June 30th. When's free agency? That would be the big one for me. And I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how the NHL sort of plans that out. Is free agency Labor Day weekend?
They're trying to...
imagine.
They're trying to plan their strategy for a race with no determined length.
They're trying to win a reality show where there's no stipulations on how you collect the money.
They're literally trying to win Too Hot to Handle right now.
It's very true.
And it's screwing up their prom.
It will.
Is what it's doing. It's
will
screwing up
absolutely.
everyone's prom.
You know what'll really screw up, and I hate to bring this up, Steve, is Sportsnet. Can you imagine hockey and baseball are back? Baseball's on every day.
Mm-hmm.
Hockey will be on every day. They have the rights to do both.
I don't think you'll find a Sportsnet employee that'll complain.
No, I think they're pretty pumped about that.
We want to work on games.
And
we want
the
there to be
NBA
sports.
too. They've got half the NBA games too.
Oh, we'll die. It'll be very hard, but it'll also be great. It'll be one of those things where it's difficult during, but A, you'll get to keep your job, and B, we'll all get to talk about that time in 2020 that was the greatest time in sports in human history.
Yeah.
Think about that. Everything is happening at once.
Yeah.
And no one saw the game in stadium.
And no one was allowed in stadium, so it didn't matter when the games were. Really, you're not, it's not a Leaf playoff game going up against a Taylor Swift concert, and you got to figure all that out. It could be the greatest time in sports ever, but I feel like in Ontario anyway, we received the news that we had our worst day ever, but we're trending towards the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're talking like, hey, what about May 2-4 and what's going on? And I think everyone's got to chill, man.
People are getting
Everyone's got to.
Yeah. There will be no chill. There will be no chill.
No, I know
and you
that.
can't tell people to chill because they won't.
No, it won't happen.
It sucks not knowing. It sucks worse getting your hopes up.
No, it doesn't.
Right?
Give me all the hope. I don't care if it has to be.
People's hopes are already up here, Steve. It's too late.
Man.
No, man, I need the hope to keep going. What does it suck to get your hopes up? Even if it's extended a couple of weeks, who cares? Let's just talk about hope here for a second. Hope is great. Hope makes me feel good.
I'm finally at the point where I'm so thirsty for sports because everyone's like, oh yeah, start the playoffs right away or do this plan. And I'm like, how about this? Finish the season. There were a dozen games left for each team. Like, how long is that going to take?
And it'll be the
schedule.
It'll be terrible hockey. It'll be great.
Yeah, but if they start the playoffs right away, they'll die. They'll die. Like I got to talk to Matt Dumba today of the Minnesota Wild. It was on Sportsnet's Instagram Live, and I was just like, so what do you do? Because if you're a soccer player, it's hard enough to train. If you're a basketball player, it's hard enough to train. How many of these guys have a 200-foot rink in their backyard? None of them.
None of them.
Yeah. Unless you're Jeremy Roenick.
Unless you're then you have an Olympic facility in your backyard, and that's that backyard makes me feel great every time there's lockout talk.
So what did Matt Dumba say?
Oh, he's basically like, well, I'm just trying to stay in shape, basically. But like these guys are, like I'm looking at some of them, and I'm just like they're all in like the Bruins broadcast last night where they were rewatching Game 7 of the 2011 Cup Final. Like, it doesn't sound like they're in beast mode exactly.
No,
you know what I mean? And I don't expect them to be on the ice because obviously they can't be. But like, you guys are expecting them to jump directly into playoff hockey? You're nuts. It's not going to happen.
Right? I think it would be great. It won't be. Like, they won't do it. But I think it would be just phenomenal. I think it'd be so much fun.
There will be fewer connected passes than shots on goal by the end of the first period. Like it'll be awful. It'll be the worst hockey you've ever watched.
Well, that's okay.
And
I'm
yet
okay with some
it'll
bad
be
hockey.
great.
We've watched some bad Leaf hockey this year that's just been stale and boring. So at least this would be just erratic.
I'm saying finish the regular season.
Well, that will be what happens.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring on Hailey in just a second here. So let's pause, and we'll be right back, and we're going to talk about the NWHL expansion into Toronto. And welcoming back to the show, I think this has got to be like your fourth or fifth time, Hailey Salvian from The Athletic. Woo! So excited to have you. So, Hailey, I mean, you've been following this story, and I feel like you knew today was coming for a while. But Toronto gets the long-rumored NWHL team that has been talked about and talked about and talked about. I think we mentioned it earlier on the show. 2016 was the first time we heard about it. Maybe even earlier than that.
16 or 17.
How did this all come together? How long has it been in the works? And can you get into, I mean, we don't even know things like the name of the team, where they're going to be playing. Do you have any hints on that too?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was around 2016, the 2016-17 season that reports first started coming out about, there was never really, a concrete plan. There was never a big official announcement, but the NWHL had expressed interest in expanding into Canada. That would have been at around year 2 or 3 of the NWHL because it wasn't launched until 2015. But then that never came to fruition. And then the one time that I reported on it, once I started covering women's hockey, was immediately after the CWHL folded, which would have been a year ago in March, sorry.
Wow.
I'm getting my dates mixed up. So it would have been a year ago in March that the CWHL folded. And that was the first time that I personally reported on, an expansion into Toronto. And that was something that the NWHL wanted to do. They wanted to step into that marketplace after they saw all those teams get wiped out. They expressed interest in going to Toronto and Montreal, just because the geography, it would have been more cost effective than, expanding into Calgary or, one of the China teams. But then there was a lot of pushback from the PWHPA. Obviously, that association was formed in May after the NWHL expressed that interest. So the league kind of backed off and said, you know what, if 200 players are going to be boycotting us, we're not going to work on, putting money and time into an expansion team. So they kind of put that aside. And then, they say that they had a really great year. I haven't seen any of the books, but they say they had a good season this year. And Canada is something that they wanted to do, and they saw an opportunity. And obviously, they found that there was some players that were interested in rejoining their league in the Toronto market. So yeah, now it's official. But I've known for a little while that something was coming. But yeah, today is the official day.
So if this has been coming for a little while, do you know how much, I don't know if you know there's a pandemic. Do you know how much this has affected plans? If it's helped it in some odd way or if it's pushed things back?
That's a good question. And I mean, I think it would be purely speculative. I mean, there could be some players who were part of the PWHPA who, I know that there was some talk and some speculation. The PWHPA, they don't say it outright all the time, but what they want is an NHL back league. And the reality of the NHL creating a women's hockey league when they're losing so much money right now due to this pandemic, it's maybe not the most realistic thing in the world. And that is purely speculation on my part. I don't have that, officially. There was a league in the works, or that, now they can't make one. Sorry, my dog's walking around. He's really loud. That's speculation on my part, but perhaps some of the players, maybe realized that and thought, you know what, we're going to be not playing that many games. We're going to be doing this tour again for, we don't know how long. The NWHL is over here. They're announcing all these new numbers. They're announcing all these great things. Why don't we jump over there? I think I don't know how much this pandemic had to do with it. I think to the core of it, it's just that the NWHL presented a better opportunity to some of these players. The 5 players that have signed already, they're not national team players. They're not on Hockey Canada or USA Hockey. They're players who are now going to be able to make around $20,000 a year. They're going to play 20 hockey games and they're going to play in their backyard. Well, they probably still work their full-time job. And I think they just made the decision that it was the best thing for them.
When it comes to relations between the PWHPA and the NWHL, we've heard things back and forth that they'd communicated, and then another side said, well, we didn't communicate, and one side said, well, yeah, we did, but we're just not on the same page. And there's a lot of, it's a very complicated issue, and we don't need to get back into the history too much because it's already been reported on widely. But do you sense maybe somewhat of a thaw in the relationship between the NWHL and the PWHPA? And I guess as an adjunct to that, when you have 5 players who, they're not national team players, but they were a part of the PWHPA, they believed in what they stood for. When you have them sign with the NWHL and make that choice, pretty tough choice, I would think. How do you think that they came to that decision? And, what do you think the ramifications are for that?
Yeah, and I think that it's a really complex relationship between the two sides. And yeah, there is a ton of that back and forth. And it's a lot of he said, she said. Things can get really blown up, especially in the media, with that memo that went out and the webinars and et cetera, et cetera. I think kind of like I mentioned, for these players to come to the decision to leave, I believe one of the players, she didn't even play a full season with the PWHPA. She had left the movement halfway through the year. And some of the players maybe even only played around one or two of the showcases. So that's a handful of hockey games. You're not making money. If you play in a showcase, it's either in your home. So in Toronto, there was 2 showcases, or you're going to Arizona or Philadelphia or California, which is fine, but if you're working a full-time job, that might not be available to you. They had some training centers where you could practice, but it wasn't a professional league. It's not a professional league. It's an association. They're boycotting because they want something better. And I think at the beginning, for some of the players, they truly believe that there could be something better, maybe quicker than it's happened. The NHL has been steadfast that they're not going to get involved until there's no options for women. And the NWHL is trucking on, and they continue to make it clear that they're not going anywhere. They got more investment this year. They have more money. They've now expanded, and now 2 of their teams are privately owned. So by all accounts, the NWHL is doing well. And if you believe that the NHL is not going to get involved until the NWHL is gone, then how much longer are a lot of these players willing to wait? It's different for the national team members than it is for the girls who just work full time and want to play hockey. And the reality is a lot of those players who are giving up playing hockey while they're still in their prime, because these women are, between 25 and 30 years old. They're in the prime of their career and they're not playing. Some of those players will not make a WNHL if there is one. So for them, it comes to a point where, do you give up your hockey career to fight for something that you're not going to be a part of? And I think that's part of that discussion. And then there's also the question of, is it ever going to happen? It's super complicated.
Yeah,
and I feel like I ramble so much when I talk about it, but
it's a podcast.
We
want your answer
going on there.
No, this is why you're here. So, the great thing about our show is you can actually be nuanced with it, because we don't have to move you on too quickly, right? You can get into the nuts and bolts of things. And so, I think that's the hardest part for everybody, because I think everybody's united in the sense that everybody wants women's hockey to succeed. Mm-hmm. I think where people sort of split is down the middle. And it's unfortunate that every time there's an announcement, people feel the need to take sides. I mean, today, at least from my perspective, was a big win for women's hockey. You're talking about one of the best markets for hockey anywhere in the world. And there's a professional hockey team here again for women. Regardless of the split between the two, this is a huge win. And I wonder if, and I don't know if you see this, but do you see a day when it's possible that the NWHL can meet the demands that the PWHPA, not necessarily, I guess you could call them demands, but just the requests that they have of, here's what we need a professional framework to look like.
A living wage.
100%. And how far away are they from that? Because the NWHL is a business, and as a business can only pay so much. They've got a 50-50 revenue split like the NHL does. It might take a while for them to find the revenue to do that. Do you think they're closer than it might seem? Is this something that they're ever going to be able to satisfy for the PWHPA?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just first say, what do you guys consider a livable wage, especially if you're living in places like Toronto, Boston, and New York? Because right now the salaries are $20,000, and that's been deemed, this is the best year ever. You're going to make $20,000 this year. Yeah. Mind you, they're only playing 20 games. You're not playing a full NHL docket. But I think it's a ways away from what I believe that the PWHPA thinks that they deserve. And when you think of the CWHL, Marie-Philippe Poulin, who is by all accounts the Sidney Crosby of women's hockey, she made maximum $10,000. So think of that and you look at just how talented and important these players are and can be, it's still a ways away from, I think, what they would believe is a livable wage. I don't think they're asking for $100,000, but they want to be able to play hockey full time and not have to work full time on the side. So, I think that wage is going to be quite high. And if 20 grand is where they're at right now, it's still a ways away. And it's other things, the NWHL has increased the amount of practice time. They have rinks now for them to practice at, I think 2 to 3 times a week, they've said, for next season, which is an improvement. The practices are quite late at night because these players are still working full time. That's something that the PWHP doesn't like. They don't want to practice at 10 p.m. at night, 8, 9 o'clock. They want to have their practice, like you'd go to Leafs practice at 10 a.m., right? It's your job. You're doing that during the day. You go to practice, you work out, you get your rehab, you get your food, whatever, and then you have the rest of your day to relax like a true professional. And those are the things I believe that they're asking for. And it's the other little things too. They truly believe that the only way to be successful is to have that true partnership with the National Hockey League, not just by name association, but it's the infrastructure, it's the marketing, it's everything that's put behind it. They don't just want someone to slap a sticker and say, the Leafs support the PWHPA. They want, a women's Toronto Maple Leafs or a women's Bruins and everything that comes with that. They haven't come out and said that too many times, but when they talk about the things that they want, they point to the WNBA. They point to what's happening in soccer with the National Women's Soccer League right now. And those two examples are true partnerships between the NBA and the WNBA. And then the National Women's Soccer League is a bit different because the MLS is partnered, and then so is Canada Soccer and US Soccer. But those two examples that they point to of what they want would indicate that they want, a true partnership with the NHL. And I don't think the NHL truly believes in the NWHL's model either. Mm-hmm. Gary Bettman has kind of said in some words, like, I'm not going to kibosh their league. But I don't believe Gary believes in the NWHL model the same way he didn't believe in the CWHL model. So it's just very complicated.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so they don't have a home right now beyond Toronto. It's a big place. There's several arenas. Do you think the NHL or the PWHPA or somebody would try to get in the way of saying, well, you can't play in Scotiabank Arena or you can't play in Coca-Cola Coliseum? Or do you think those arenas are too big? Like, are they even looking at them? It's just confusing to me that they're moving to Toronto with no rink, no defined rink to play in.
Yeah, and I think, I was told that, nothing is final yet. They're making good strides. They don't have an arena solidified yet. They don't have a team name solidified yet. I don't think that the Leafs or, the PWHPA will try to put a kibosh on anything. I think that would probably be a PR disaster. Yeah. Like if the Toronto Maple Leafs came in and said, like, no women's hockey players, you can't come here.
Right.
But, I do think that they'll probably look for something that's smaller. The Toronto Furies played at MasterCard Center at that Hockey Canada pad. And then the Markham Thunder played at the Thornhill Community Center in, I guess, Markham, or I don't know where that, Richmond Hill.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I lived in Liberty Village. I was in a bubble. So I think that they would probably look for, something on a smaller scale. I don't think they would try for Scotiabank or Coca-Cola. They would probably try like a Westwood Arena, a community center type, maybe MasterCard Center, something that they would be able to fill the stands.
Do you have any idea what the next market the NWHL might be looking to expand to? Because Toronto's the obvious one. Is the next one Montreal or another place in the GTA, possibly?
I'd probably say if they're going to continue to expand into Canada, that Montreal would be probably the second one, considering when they made their first or I guess they're technically their second push. They expressed interest in both Toronto and Montreal. You know, you would get to do you'd probably just go Buffalo, Toronto, Montreal, and then go back home if you're like a Boston team going on a road trip. I think that would probably make the most sense. And Montreal is a pretty big women's hockey market. Some fans have said they want one in Ottawa as well. But there was no established CWHL market. I think that's probably the important part, is when you're looking at expanding, and even with the PWHPA, when you're looking at putting on events, it's been shown that they do better when it's in an established women's hockey market. So, you know, when the PWHPA did their Toronto showcase, it did really well. When they were in Kingston, that's Jana Hefford's hometown, it did really well. But smaller areas like New Hampshire or, you know, Arizona aren't going to perform as well because there was no established, you know, marketplace and fan base from a previous professional team. So I would say Montreal is probably next.
And do you think, would that be ready for this coming season, or would that be something that would be maybe next year? We have you on and we're talking about that then.
I think Toronto would be ready. Like, Toronto will be ready for next season, but I think if they announce, they would probably see how this goes and then see what happens in the next year. Because I think when you think of everything that's happened in women's hockey in just a year, it's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah.
So they'll probably wait and see what's going to happen in the next 12 months before they make another decision.
So then, with you talked about the ownership situation with the NWHL. So there's a few teams that are league owned, and then there's a couple that are privately owned. And I believe the Toronto one is privately owned, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you tell us what you know about the ownership group? I know it's a 3-way operation. What the connection is, and even, you know, even some background, like how did they get the owners in place? Are these people local Torontonians? Are they from somewhere else? Like, what's their story?
Yeah, so the first team that was technically privately owned was the Buffalo Beauts. They were owned by the Pagulas. But then when the boycott started, the Pagulas pulled out of their ownership, and then the Beauts were sold back to the NWHL. And then this year, the first team that began private ownership after the Pagulas was the Boston Pride. So the gentleman who is part of the ownership group of the Pride is also involved in the ownership group of this Toronto franchise. And as of right now, there's actually no Canadians involved in the ownership or management or coaching of this franchise.
Wow.
There's a few players who are Canadian and have ties to Toronto, but there's no Canadians involved in this Canadian expansion team at this time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of them, I think, have like Boston ties. You know, the big name that's maybe more familiar to some women's hockey people is Digit Murphy. She was a longtime coach of Brown University, and then she also coached in the CWHL. She coached the Boston Pride, and then she went out to China and coached the Chinese expansion team before the one folded, and then she no longer worked with the CWHL. Two of the players that signed with Boston were coached by Digit previously. So I heard that some of her recruitment was going through the CWHL marketplace and, you know, going to the Furies players and the Thunder players and players that she had coached previously. But as far as the owners, yeah, I think they're mostly Boston. One of the main names is, her name is Ty Timinia. I think I butchered her last name, but her name's Tyler. And she's the chairwoman of this Toronto franchise, and her background was actually in minor league baseball. Like, she was a baseball executive. She's 41 and now she's moving into hockey. Christina Rutherford actually did a nice piece on kind of, you know, her rise in baseball into women's hockey now. But as far as background as to how that all came together, I haven't become, you know, too privy to those details, but for the most part, I think, you know, it was the gentleman from Boston who was the main lead on buying the Pride. You know, he obviously, those Boston ties to Digit Murphy led to this Toronto expansion. How Digit got tied to Toronto, I'm not 100% sure. But it's kind of like a Massachusetts, Boston, Toronto expansion, it seems.
When I saw this news,
do you see that being a problem?
Oh yeah, sorry.
With the lack of Toronto ties to the team that will be based out of here?
I think that it'll be interesting to see, like, are they all going to move to Toronto? Are you guys going to manage the team from Boston and just call Toronto? Like, I think it is their plan to have more Canadian and Toronto people involved. They don't have a general manager or a coach yet. They have, their ownership. They have a chairperson, chairwoman, and then they have the president, which is Digit. So I think it's a priority for them to get somebody who's going to be, on the ground that's from the area. Because you just think about little things like marketing in that area and, little things like where to play. Who are the minor league hockey teams that you want to, try to get in the building? I think having that knowledge of Toronto and the GTA is going to be so important to making that team successful. Because the Toronto Furies, they struggled a lot, and that was run by Sammy Jo Small, an Olympian who lived in Toronto. Natalie Spooner was from Toronto, and she couldn't pull more than 200 fans. So I think getting somebody from Toronto who truly understands the city and how to make it work is going to be important. I don't know if it'll be a huge issue, but I could see them being more successful if they get a local name for sure.
Yeah, and community outreach is going to be key.
Yeah.
So I want to know your reaction, because obviously you knew about this news before we did, but I'm sort of like, NHL postponed, NBA postponed, MLB postponed, NWHL expanding. And I was just like, That makes sense. Like, that is very on brand for the NWHL. Were you surprised at all when you heard it?
Not really. Like, they're very ambitious, and I think Danny Rylan is, she's a very ambitious businesswoman, and I think for them this was something they had planned before all this started happening, and maybe it was, this will be like a nice distraction, like, because I don't think Isabel Cup, it's giving people something to talk about, and especially in women's hockey circles, like the amount of passion and the amount of fighting that goes on online. Anytime there is like a shred of women's hockey news,
I've never seen any.
That's a joke, right?
Yes.
Okay. You're dead, man. You're good. Like, I've seen so many tweets of people saying things like, oh my God, I haven't like been angry in 5 weeks. Like, this is actually so nice to have something to like yell online about. So yeah, it's weird timing. And, one of the players did kind of express, one of the PWHPA players did kind of express to me, off the record, like, we haven't announced or made any plans for next season because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and some of our players are nurses and healthcare professionals in the front line. So we're not doing anything. But yeah, that the NWHL, whatever their reasons for it, it's provided a distraction for sure.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be lots to watch, and we're going to be checking in with you, I have a feeling, often as this continues, as we get a name, as we get an arena, as we get more of the roster announced. Hailey Salvian of The Athletic, you can check out her pieces. You should follow her on Twitter, Hailey_Salvian. And, of course, check her out in The Athletic. And, Hailey, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Sorry I ramble so much.
Please, come and ramble. Love it.
That's what a guest does.
That's
that's pretty good.
The Presser. SDP. The Steve Dangle Press Conference.
All right, press conference time. Let's do it.
All right, press conference. Question from Alex.Nolan93 on Instagram. He DM'd me. He says, hey, I'd love for Adam to talk about Alexander the Great, since we share the same name, and I don't know much about him.
Well, he was great.
Do you know how he got to be known as the Great?
Yes. Dude.
Probably because he was in charge, and he was just like, this is what you call me now, or I kill you.
Yeah, sort of. There was a little of that going on. Alexander the Great is widely considered the best general of all time. Like, the greatest military leader of all time. And obviously you can only judge military leaders in the context of how they do in their time. But this is a guy that started with, so to rewind, his father, Philip, probably would have been the more recognizable name. But the cool thing about Alexander is...
Philip what? Philip the
Philip
Great?
of Macedon.
Seymour Hoffman.
No, he would have been Philip the Great. Yes, for sure.
Okay.
So Macedonian, the weird thing about, so just to give you an idea. So Alexander the Great is Macedonian, which is just above, Macedon is just above Greece. But what Philip did was he took all the Greek city-states. You remember that, 300 where it's Athens, Sparta, other cities that are smaller. Yeah. He took all of those cities plus, Thessalonica and several other places and united them. So he united the Greek peninsula. And he was just about to take this unbelievable army. Basically, he was going to take them east to Persia. And you have to remember, with marriage is not considered the same then as it is now. So you would have multiple wives, and a lot of the marriages that you would have would be ones that are politically motivated. So he marries Alexander's mother, who is considered, she's a great character on her own. I forget her name at the moment, but I highly suggest you look her up because she's an unbelievable character in history. She's a strong, powerful, conniving, brilliant, political operating woman who's just unflippin' real. And
Steve, if you could look up the name for us, that'd be great.
Look it up. She is one of the greatest characters in history. She's the most fun. She's more fun to read about than Alexander the Great or his dad. But the thing is that, Philip marries multiple people because he's got to solidify political alliances. Do you have the name?
Olympias.
There it is.
That's amazing.
Is the Olympics named after her?
No.
Oh.
No, Olympias, there's like, no.
I don't know.
No.
I'm not the smart history person here.
Olympias was the daughter of King Neoptolemus.
Nemesis? Yeah, who knows? It doesn't matter.
So
you gotta remember. So and Philip is so scared. So this is Alexander's dad. Philip is so scared of this woman because she sleeps with snakes that she sleeps with poisonous snakes, and depictions of her have snakes wrapped around her arms. Philip is terrified of this particular wife, absolutely freaked out. And she is really the queen of the court. Like, she's the one that sort of runs things and is the operator. So anyway, the word is that he's going out to get married, and he is marrying somebody to solidify a political alliance so that he can take this army and not worry about, issues at home and go and conquer. So he's going out, and he is in front of a crowd that, is still not, they're a little iffy on him. And he leaves his guard behind. It's very like JFK. It's like, oh no, don't put me in the bubble. I want to be wide open. Then obviously, what happens in 63 happens. Same thing with Philip. He's like, no, leave the bodyguards behind. I'm going to walk out by myself. And Philip's been at war for like 20 years. So he's got a limp. He's missing an eye. He's scarred up, but he's like this grizzled war vet. And from what I understand, what I remember, a servant comes up and stabs him. And it's either a servant or it's a noble, a young noble. And the young noble runs off and has a couple horses waiting for him, almost gets away, but trips just as he gets to his horse, and they catch up with him and kill him. But Philip dies. And the way I've heard it described, the best way I've heard it described is, imagine your dad is a race car driver, and he races for Ferrari at F1, which is the best car that you could have, a McLaren, Ferrari, whatever, interchangeable. And he hands you the keys to a brand new, warmed up Ferrari F1. Like, it's sitting in the driveway going. Blah, 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 blah.
Your dad's Michael
army.
Schumacher, and you're his son, Adam Schumacher. And
That's
he says,
right.
"Here's
And
my car, son.
Here's my car. Go and try to win some races with it." And of course, history's littered with stories of sons of great fathers that can't do that. It's full of. In fact, most of the time, when you have a great father, you have a piddly ass son. Most of the time, but that is not the case, because Alexander is not seen to be Philip's son. He's seen to be Olympias's son.
Oh,
Because of the relationship they have, which is often contentious, but her whole goal in life is to make sure that he inherits that damn throne. And there are people that want to take that throne away, because Philip obviously has other kids. He's got other marriages, probably people with more legitimate claims to the throne than Alexander. So when Philip dies, Alexander is at the wedding, and he then has to go and take out his other siblings. Like, he's now the king. Now he's got to take out his other siblings. And this kid's like 18.
This happened?
At the wedding?
This happened. No, not at the wedding, but like in the months afterwards.
This isn't Game of Thrones.
This is this is how it was. This was Macedonian politics, man. It's cutthroat and insane. So he's got to go have all of his siblings killed from other people so that there can be no claims on the throne. So they have the assassins do that. Alexander leaves with the army. He never comes back. But he takes this army and goes up against Persia. And you got to remember the difference between a Greek Macedonian army and a Persian army. A Persian army is forced to be there. They're conscripted. They are farmers. They are not well trained. They are not well equipped. You know, they got some units that are really intensely good, but most of them are not people that are used to war or going to war. And there's not really the military cohesion that we would see, that we've seen in the last, say, 500 years from major nation states. You're talking about guys who are like, yeah, I got to go to the army for 2 months every year because that's my duty to my king. But other than that, I'm a farmer and I got, 5 kids at home, and I'd really prefer to survive this because they're going to starve if I don't get back. So I'm not really going to fight too hard. So but the Persians have numbers, huge numbers of people. What the Greek Macedonians have is a group of men who also oftentimes are farmers, but they have developed a very, very simple way of fighting wars. And that is the Greek phalanx or phalanx or whatever the hell it's called. It's
phalanx.
Phalanx. That's what it is. So it's the basically they get together. Everybody has a gigantic 20-foot spike, made of a tree. And if you get it close enough formation, you don't even need that much armor. Nothing's getting through that, maybe an arrow or two. And some of these guys do have chest-plated armor, and they've got headpieces, and they've got shin pieces and arms or whatever. But a lot of them don't. And it's interesting. The way they set them up is they've got, they're all in squares. They're in infantry squares, but they kind of line up in a big line. So they'll put the guys who are well-trained and in the prime of their life. We're talking in our age range, it would be like 25 to 35, but back then you didn't live very long. So let's say you're 23, 24 years old. You are in the best shape you'll ever be. You don't really have that many injuries and that sort of things that would slow you down. You've got a ton of energy and you're fired up and ready to go. So you got the best of the best at the front. Then you've got, midway through the pack, you've got the young guys, the guys who are still sort of learning how to fight. And they are, they're lined up, there's maybe the first guys are 4 or 5 rows deep. Then you got the next guys, the young guys, who are going to watch their example. So let's say Jesse's the youngest on this show. So let's say Steve's at the front. He's the guy who, is fired up and ready to go. And problem of my life, I'm ready to fight for my king. Excuse me. Jesse is the next guy in. Jesse is probably a little bit more skittish, a little bit younger, and happy to be a few rows back because I got to learn how to do this. Because there's something that we don't know in history. And I think Dan Carlin perfectly says this. We don't know what it's like anymore for two armies without guns to hit each other midfield. We don't know what that looks like. There's no video of footage of that. There's accounts of it. But what you have to look at medieval and pre-medieval warfare as a bunch of small murders happening at once. You have to physically kill someone, and you see them die.
Do they have cannons at least?
They have no cannons.
Or is that's
no? This is 2,000
times.
years before cannons.
Okay.
This is 500 years before the Roman Empire, man.
Okay.
Don't let the movies fool you. There's cannons. They have little bomb arms. They ride in on rhinos and elephants and everything.
So this is literally like spears and just shivs and knives.
Spears and they have a pocket sword.
Bunch of sharp shit.
Yeah, and so then at the end of the Greek film of how do you say it again? I don't know why I can't say it today. Phalanx. They have the grizzled vets. So let's say I'm the old guy. I am the grizzled. I have been in several wars with different cities because if you were a city 10 kilometers away, screw you, we're going to war. Because most people never left, within, a couple kilometers of their city. So there'd be cities that would be 10 kilometers apart that would fight all the time. And so you become really grizzled and strong and you know what to do. So the reason that you have the veterans at the back is because, maybe they're not physically as able as the other guys. They're the ones with the most spirit, and they stay the coolest under pressure, and they prevent the young guys in the middle from running. So Alexander has this army.
They're the quarterback, power play quarterback.
They're game managers, right?
Yeah.
So they are what Tom Brady is going to be in Tampa, a game manager. So they walk into Persia, they conquer all of Persia, and it takes them a couple years.
And this is Alexander's army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even close. Like it's not a close run thing. I think there's a couple times and the thing is, generals at this time, kings at this time led from the front. So the first battle that they hit with the Persians, Alexander takes his cavalry, he's on horseback, and goes straight up the center for the Persian king, who was in a chariot, and throws a spear and barely misses him. And so the Persian king gets freaked out. He runs, and of course his soldiers run. And so the Persian king from that point on, I believe, is on the run, and they eventually catch up with him. But he tries again to stop Alexander, can't stop Alexander. Alexander then rolls into Babylon, which is one of the great major cities of that time period. I think somewhere in like modern day Iraq, I would think. I know it's near Syria. And then they go down the Mediterranean into Egypt, so they conquer the Egyptians, and then they even go further east than that. They end up in India. Can you imagine, right? You're walking from Macedonia to Syria to Palestine to Egypt, and then you're walking across all the way to India. And at that time, it was the biggest empire of all time. They thought that monkeys, when they got to India, they thought monkeys were soldiers. So they started shooting at them in the trees. They thought they were human beings. They'd never seen them before.
Or monkeys.
They were fighting. Yeah,
Oh,
right?
no.
They were fighting. They were fighting
God.
men on the backs of elephants. So you imagine, it's the first time in your life you've seen an elephant, and it's a war elephant, which were the biggest elephants, and they were trained and trained and trained. And
You'd be
Indian
freaked
soldiers,
the fuck out.
Oh.
Like, what is this giant animal?
Like, what is this thing,
Yeah.
right? The biggest thing you've seen in your life is a cow, and you've never heard of an elephant. It's never been referenced.
Wow.
And the whole thing that he was trying to do, because he was a scholar, I think it was, was it Pluto? Did he study under Pluto?
Plato.
Or was it Archimedes? Plato.
Plato.
Archimedes? Plato. Anyway,
Socrates?
No, Archimedes was later. Yeah, Socrates or Plato, one of the two, I forget. But there
I
was
lived
a
few
theory.
houses down from Socrates. The Canadian rapper.
The Canadian rapper.
Sorry.
There was a theory that if you went east far enough, you could sail back and get into, which is technically true, but he would have had to go through India and then China.
Yeah.
And then sail
you
back.
gotta go a long way.
This is when they thought the Earth was a lot smaller, right? So basically he was pushing. He dies at the age of 32. He is a severe alcoholic. He kills one of his best friends and generals in a drunken rage in India because this guy dares to make fun of him or challenge him. And he dies under very mysterious circumstances. A lot of people think he was poisoned. And what's interesting is what happens afterwards is you've got 4 successor kingdoms, because they ask him as he dies, Alexander, who does the empire go to? And he is supposed to have said, the strongest. So he's dying, and like, who's your successor? Whoever the strongest is. Well, that doesn't really work. But Ptolemy ends up in Egypt, and he forms the Ptolemaic dynasty, and they last until the Romans come along and Julius Caesar ends the Ptolemaic dynasty. There's the Seleucid Empire, which is in modern day Syria, Iran, and Iraq, I believe.
Iraq, you were right for Babylon, by the way.
I was? Okay.
I think so.
And then there's I believe the Bactrian Empire, and then there's another one as well, and it escapes. But there's the Greek Macedonian.
So how much
faction
of when he died? How much of the world had he conquered? Like, what was Alexander the Great's? What did he get?
So basically, from Greece all the way to India, not super far north, because that was just plains and there was not a lot of people there. But you're talking about from the top of Greece all the way over to the top of India. It's an enormous amount of territory when you have no way of there's no airplanes, there's no there's nothing. It's horseback or you're walking. These guys,
they did have segways, surprisly. For some reason.
I heard about that.
The glowing ones.
Yeah. And back then you could get a girlfriend and have a Segway at the same time. It's crazy.
Whoa.
Wow.
Can't do that now.
Nope. But it's a fascinating story. Olympias, I think, is more exciting than Alexander, but that's just me. I would highly, highly, highly recommend anybody. And the Oliver Stone movie about him is a little bit long or whatever, but it tells you some stuff.
Oh, the Alexander, wasn't that like a critical flop?
Oh, it was bad.
It was a
It's
bomb.
not a great movie.
Yeah.
It starts okay, but it's a bit directionless. But the Alexander the Great story is very, very interesting, and every general after him, Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, all of the major guys sort of looked to Alexander. And I believe in military schools today, including like West Point, anybody that's graduating great officers, they all have to study Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon Bonaparte.
That's
so
cool.
they have to study their moves because their moves are still relevant today, just with different technology. So he's a fascinating man. And also probably histories. I think he was also, I think at very least he was bisexual, but the thought at the time was he preferred boys. Like he was always about, he preferred the company of men, I believe is how it was put. So he's probably history's most prominent and famous homosexual as well. And so there's just so much about him that was another thing interesting
about the movie. People, no, I do remember that. Sorry.
Yeah, the movie makes one reference to it. Like he like marries Rosario Dawson, and the thing is that when he gets into Persia, he wants to incorporate the Persians into the Persian Empire, so he takes a Persian bride. The Greeks don't like that, but it's like, well, he's integrating with them, and we don't like that. We want to dominate them. And his thought was, no. If we're going to create an empire that with some cohesion, we got to adopt some of their traits. They got to adopt some of ours, which was very forward thinking when you look at it.
At the time.
Oh, yeah, that's progressive.
100%. Yeah, very progressive.
People today don't want to do that.
I know. And it's crazy, but like, that's the thing, right?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the long and short of Alexander the Great. I'm sure there are people that could tell it much better. But he wanted to integrate himself into the Persian society, and he married his wife, whatever. But like the Oliver Stone movie makes one little reference to this guy getting into bed with him, and that's it. The real story is he mostly, when he was having sex, was mostly with men. And just, and back then, people were far more fluid about their sexuality than they are even today. I think today it's more like, what box do you fit into? Back then it was like, whatever, just do who you do.
Mm.
So it's
we're slowly getting back to that society.
I think so. Yeah, I hope we do.
Yeah, and conquering on horseback.
Maybe not
also.
That.
Yeah,
maybe not.
No
that.
one's ever seen an
wiping out all your
elephant.
potentials.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Wow, Adam, you're freaking so impressive.
No, I'm not. But
Yeah.
that is Alexander the Great was a very impressive person. He
All
did
that
it all
could've
by
been
the age of
wrong.
32.
All that could have been wrong, but it's just the way you said it. I'm like, I believe you. I believe you, dog. It was good.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's Adam's History Corner for today.
Yay!
Yay.
So Friday, we'll see you guys 9:00.
Oh. Yes, sir. Anyway, hey, thank you so much for listening. We will see you Friday night on the Steve Dangle podcast YouTube channel, and obviously on, oh my goodness, on
Tumblr.
Pete Blackburn's Twitch as well.
Oh.
And then on Sunday, we'll be back with the show where we'll have Anya Packer on. And don't forget, next Wednesday's show will feature NWHL Commissioner Danny Ryland. Pretty good lineup.
On Sunday, can we talk about The Last Dance?
Oh, yes. I haven't seen it yet, though.
The Michael
but
Jordan.
I desperately want to.
So we got to talk about the end of Too Hot to Handle and The Last Dance.
Have you guys seen it? The first 2 episodes?
I have not.
Okay,
I'm
you got
excited.
a couple days to watch it. It's
Okay.
really good.
I'm ready.
All right.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Brought to you by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness. Connection complete.